You're listening to the Tales of Leadership podcast. This podcast is for leaders at any phase on their leadership journey to become a more purposeful and accountable leader, what I like to call a pal. Join me on our journey together towards transformational leadership. Hey, welcome back to the Tales of Leadership podcast. I am your host, Josh McMillian, an active duty Army officer and the founder of McMillian Leadership Coaching. And I am on a mission to create a better leader, what I like to call a pal, a purposeful, accountable leader. And my vision is to positively impact 1 million lives in the next 10 years. Actually, now it's 9 years, which is crazy to think about. And I plan to do that by sharing transformational stories and skills. Today is going to be a story from a purposeful, accountable leader, Stephen Morris. Stephen is a passionate and experienced leader with over 21 years of combined service in the military and the corporate sector. As a United States Army veteran, Stephen has commanded and led in combat and non-combat deployments across the globe, honing a deep understanding of leadership under pressure in chaos. After transitioning to civilian life, he faced a lot of demons and challenges of adapting to a new work environment and found his calling as a leadership development and career coach. Drawing inspiration from the exceptional leaders who shaped his journey, he founded Renowned Leadership, a platform dedicated to helping individuals at all levels, from CEOs to team leaders, enhance their leadership skills and career strategies. Stephen believes in developing authentic leaders with unwavering character and integrity, guiding them towards becoming leaders whom everyone is eager to follow. This is a phenomenal story, and Stephen gets really vulnerable about some of the demons that he had to face, but Stephen is a purposeful, accountable leader. Let's go ahead and bring him on the show, and as always, make sure you stay to the end, and I will provide you what the top 3 takeaways are from this episode. Let's jump right in. Stephen, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast, brother. How you doing?
I'm fantastic, dude. Put some music back on for a little bit, man. I was jamming. I
Dude,
like that little intro music, bro.
yeah, that's it's funny, like kind of like to center yourself, right? Like that kind of like gets me in the right state
Yeah.
of mind to start doing a jam session. And it's funny too, because like I recently started talking about like, podcasting. I call them like jam sessions now, because there's really like no kind of like strict flow or like rhythm to it. It's kind of, we're just fluid state of just talking about things that we love.
I love it, man. And in all my podcasting, like those are the ones that really, like, you can tell whenever it's scripted, when I've had to script it, and whenever it's just we're riffing it, we're just having fun, having a good conversation, between a couple of cool dudes that brings value to people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, that's whenever people like really enjoy it. That's when I enjoy doing it. Yeah, totally. I'm with you 100%. Like, let's crush it, bro.
So this is one of the firsts for me, kind of in terms of podcasting, is that I just had Clint on the podcast, not to or sorry, other guests in terms of being on the podcast. And you're one of those kind of like referrals to like, hey, you need to reach out to Stephen because he's a phenomenal leader. And we were able to connect really this week through Chris, which was a great episode. So I'm really excited to see like how that evolution kind of grew, and then maybe if you could tell any dirty secrets, right, about Chris.
Man, so man, how did I meet? So I've known Chris for about a year and a half now, and I had hired a coach to help me start my company and start my business. And the coach I hired happened to have an online program to
Mm,
help kind of do the same thing, but it's cheaper because you don't actually have the coach.
yeah.
And I just met Chris through the forums there. And he was like, "Hey, I'm doing this, you're doing that, kind of. Let's have a meeting and talk." And I won't lie to you, man. The first time I met Chris, I didn't like him. It took me probably like 3 or 4 months before I actually liked Chris. And I've told him that, so it's not a surprise. But I don't know, there's just something about him. It took me a while to like warm up to him. And I think it was just because he was so in my face. Not
Yeah.
I say that wrong. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. But Chris and I, we had started talking about spirituality
Yeah.
and, being a Christian and our beliefs and things like that. And Chris was just like, like he wasn't backing down. Like if he disagreed with me, he wasn't shy. And it's like, man, this guy's abrasive. And so I think that's what put me off of him a little bit. But my wife kept pushing me towards him for some reason. Like you should talk to that guy Chris. Like just kind of kept kind of nudging me to talk to Chris. Finally, I broke down and reached out to Chris because I needed help with something. And man, Chris is like one of my best friends now. Like I go to him for just about everything. Like if I need advice, first person I run to is Chris. I had a bad day, first person I text is Chris. Like he is just an all around good dude. And if y'all don't know who we're talking about, his name's Chris Granger. He has a podcast called The Line Within Us. Website's linewithin.us. Go check him out. He is a great dude, and he's easy to get a hold of, and he'll help anyone that asks him to help him.
That's the thing that I love, man, is when we surround ourselves with individuals that kind of like challenge us, we grow kind of in a good way. So
Mm-hmm.
I can resonate with that. Is that there's some individuals, in my life that I had a hard time kind of wanting to at least initially establish contact with, not because I didn't necessarily want to hang out with them, but they would challenge me and they would kind of hip check me to be like, hey, are you doing what you said you're going to do in terms of like starting a podcast, for example? So I'm part of like a mastermind veteran group. And sometimes Sundays when that kind of the days roll around, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. It's not that I don't want to do it. It's that
Right.
maybe I didn't do what I was supposed to do that week, and they're going to kind of hold me accountable and call me out. But I would love to start, brother. Like, just take the time to provide an overview to the listeners of who is Stephen.
Yeah, man. So Stephen, I was born in Ireland, got adopted when I was a year old, came to old great Indiana to live with my adoptive parents. And I joke. That's actually where I live now, Indianapolis, Indiana. And I joke about it just being a complete horrible place to live and grow up. But in hindsight, man, like it's home, and I love it here, and it's a great place. So anyway, I grew up here. I grew up farming, grew up working my butt off,
Mm,
and so August 2001 rolled around. I was 18, raised my right hand, joined the army. About 3 weeks later, um, some tools decided to fly into some buildings of ours, and
yeah,
we were at war for the next 20 years. And so the next 16 and a half years of my life, I spent in the army, just going back and forth between Iraq, Afghanistan, the U.S., Europe, Africa. I've literally traveled the world. It was a great time. In 2013, I ate a couple of rounds to the chest, did some pretty massive damage to my body. Fortunately, I survived. And but ultimately, that ended up ending my career abruptly in 2017. I got what's called MEB or med boarded from the army. It's basically when the army's like, yeah, you're not physically fit to serve anymore,
yeah.
and so they ceremoniously retire you, or unceremoniously in my case. And so that was hard, brother. Like that was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I tell people I'd rather get shot again 10 times over
Wow.
than go through that 3.5 years that it took me to transition from being a soldier to being a civilian. And it's still hard. Like it's been what, a little over 6 years now, and it's still hard sometimes. When what's going on right now in Israel. I don't know when this
Yeah.
is going to air, but what's going on right now in Israel with Palestine, that kicking off, like, man, that eats me alive. Like I want to like buy a plane ticket now and go to Israel because I'm a warrior, I'm a soldier, and this is what I do. I protect people from evil. And when I see things like that, it tries to pull me back into that mentality, and I have to really fight it off. So yeah, now I own my own company, host my own podcast, do all kinds of cool stuff, public speaking, keynote talks. What's it called? Not emotional. Not inspirational. Good grief. Uh, Motivational. That's the word.
Yeah.
Motivational speeches, stuff like that, man.
Dude, when I talked to you on the phone this week, I knew that you were going to be someone that I needed to get on this podcast. One, because we share the same mission in life, right? That the whole reason I started this journey is because I saw soldiers getting out of the military from my lens of how I can affect change and kind of prevent soldiers from going down that dark path is from poor leadership, because I've seen poor leaders kind of affect individual soldiers of wanting to get out of the army, great soldiers get out of the army just because of one poor leader, and maybe that soldier commit suicide. And I feel that I kind of failed them in a way, and really it comes down to like a lack of purpose. So you have that deep purpose when you're in the military, but when you transition out of the military, you don't. And I know we're going to get into that, dude, but like there's just so much to kind of unpack there. And what I would really love to start, where did you think your leadership journey started? Maybe when you first joined the Army, because one of the things that you said there, dude, you joined the Army in August of 2011, and then
2001.
or 2001, sorry.
Yeah.
And then just right after that,
Yeah.
September 11th happened. How walk me through that? Like you're in basic training, right? When that
Yeah.
when that happened.
Yeah. So we our cycle had literally just picked up.
Wow.
So, and my drill sergeant, like we're doing what's it called? You get off the bus and you get in the circle,
Oh,
and
the
drill
shark.
sergeant, shark attack.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
we were literally in the shark attack, and this drill sergeant, I can't remember his name, but I can remember his face. I'm talking, this dude's probably 6'6", probably 260, 270, not fat, just beefcake, man, just huge.
Wow.
And he walks up to me and he just gets right in my face, and like his brown round is literally touching my forehead. And he is mean, and he puts his knife hand right under my chin, and he said, "Private, you are going to die." And I just looked at him, and I like, thank God I didn't have to pee, because I'm pretty sure I would have peed my pants right then and there. But like, and I tell people that story, they're like, "Oh my God, that's horrible! Like, what a horrible thing to do to somebody." But to me, looking back, like that was the greatest gift he ever gave me,
Mm,
because from that moment on, like just the way he said it in his voice, and he was serious. Like he thought I was going to die. Like, and I don't know if like he literally thought that, but that's what I took from it. And it's like, oh my God, like this isn't Call of Duty. Like I'm going to war and I could die. Like
yeah.
I got to take this serious. And so it was crazy, man. Like instantly everybody's demeanor changed. Like it went
Yeah.
from being just straight aggressive to like, we are 100% preparing you for war now. And so, man, it got mean. It got fast. I don't really know what to compare it to, because I never went to basic training, not during wartime. But I imagine it was pretty intense for us anyway. But yeah, that's probably my fondest memory, I guess, of basic training was, you're going to die, private. You're going to die.
Yeah, I think that's like a switch moment. So when I was an observer coach trainer at Fort Polk, I had the honor to kind of see like 28 different rotations, which is crazy to think about, because
That's a
that's 20
lot.
that's 28 months, right? Like I
Holy
spent more
crap.
time in Atropia than most people probably deploy now in the military. But kind of walking through that, is there was always a distinct difference between units that were actually going to deploy right afterwards, and then units that were just going through the motion to get fully qualified in their medal tasks at like the brigade level. And the medal tasks, just for anyone listening, is a mission essential task list, and that's kind of given to you based on your specific unit and the qualifications that you need to kind of achieve your mission if you get deployed. But there's a switch moment, and I could only imagine, like when you were at basic training at that time, that there was probably a switch or a realization that everything that we're doing now isn't just training, it is a life or death type of event, and if we fail, we need to fail here. So when we do get to our units, because it was all uncertain. I remember, I was in high school at the time, and I may or may not I was a poor moral character at the time, been playing sick that day because I didn't want to go to school. And I remember that vividly and kind of thinking about, man, like the future's so uncertain. I don't know what this means. And then who you chose to serve selflessly, being in basic training, kind of going through that one very like stressful state, but then realization is like, oh crap, the world has just changed. The whole dynamics have just changed. This is no longer just a game and someone yelling at me. This is a preparation or a fire, a crucible type event to purify me to get ready for the game, the live show. And then that took me a while to kind of realize. But for you, dude, you literally had to go through that the first day in the military, which is crazy.
Pretty much, man. And you're absolutely right. And I think, you know, going back whenever I was a LRM instructor at Fort Knox, watching some of the basic training units that went through there and stuff like that, you know, they kind of goofed off a little bit more. They were kind of, I don't know, they were being treated a little bit different. I don't know how to explain it
Yeah.
other than kind of what you said is my entire company, and I imagine all the companies around us at the same time, we took it like life or death,
Yeah.
100%, like because we're in the ready room watching the towers fall
Mm,
in basic training. Like they didn't shelter us from it. They didn't, pretty much everything went on lockdown, and we were in the ready room with our drill sergeants watching the towers fall.
mm,
And that was the biggest thing, like you said, this isn't a game, this is real. And we all took it as real. So I think my basic training class, I don't even remember what it was now, but my basic training class, we I think we probably took it a little more serious than most.
so you get there, you go through basic training, you get to your unit, kind of just walking through like how I know the normal progression goes. When did you deploy once you arrived at your unit for the first time?
uh Three, almost 3 months after I got there, because they were already deployed.
Wow.
So I had to go through, what's it called? It's like a mini JRTC or NTC type thing. You know what I'm
I know
talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. It basically is kind of like a mini brigade sticks level event.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
What was it called? I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, I had to go through something like that. I had to get situated because I had a family, so we had to get them moved and situated, and then I met my unit up, and yeah, I was deployed. So I went from being a civilian to literally, what was it, 6 months? So literally about 8 months after I left, I was downrange fighting.
When you first got to your unit, kind of have to get forced into a leadership role?
That was weird because they had already been deployed, they'd already been fighting, and then this brand new PFC shows up,
Yeah.
right? And slick sleeve, no rank, no experience, no nothing. I got treated pretty rough for a
Yeah.
while. They didn't trust me. It actually took another full rotation, I would say, before they finally fully trusted me. But and given my state, I kind of took it too personal. I think
Mm,
not understand because I didn't understand the dynamic. Right, I didn't understand the camaraderie. I didn't understand the temp. I didn't understand all that stuff. So for me, looking in from the outside, I just felt excluded and I felt
yeah.
unwanted, I guess. But in reality, these dudes have been forged in fire, and I hadn't been forged yet. I hadn't been proven yet. So totally understand now. But at the time, it was pretty rough. I really hated it. And then we went through our full rotation again, and that's probably when they were like, okay, this dude, he's squared away. He knows his stuff. He can lead. And as a specialist, I got put into a team leader role because one
Mm,
of our NCOs, unfortunately, got killed, and so they gave me his team, and I've been leading ever since. I was almost 20 years old. It's like a month
Well,
away, 2 months away from being 20.
dude, so two things with that. One is I think trust. So I'm reading a book right now. So I read Dare to Lead. Now I'm reading Dare Greatly because I want to learn, how vulnerability kind of plays in with trust. But I see that
Mm,
there's really two different ways to build trust. One of which is time. You just have to be with people, and it takes consistency, and then effort, the amount of effort that you put into things. But there's another level of that, which is like vulnerability, not from the standpoint of where I'm going to tell you all of my deep little secrets, right? Or I'm just going to complain about everything or tell you how scared I am about stuff, but it's just being authentic and I think genuine.
mhm.
And I bet you that this is just me being a betting man, kind of coming from the same cloth of when you had to take over that team at that time after that NCO passed away. You came in with a deep sense of humility, which probably came off as in a very vulnerable kind of state, not vulnerable how most people think, and you were probably able to gain trust rather quickly. I'm assuming because people knew who you were, you spent time, the amount of effort that you were putting into it probably increased tenfold, and you came into it probably with just a humble mindset. But if you don't mind, man, and if we ever get to a point where you just don't want to talk about it, you just let me know and we'll keep going because
No,
I
we're good.
understand that. But walking in that shoes, how did you take over, that squad? What was some of your like first thoughts?
Well, at first, like Sergeant Carson and I, we were really close. He's really the one that kind of molded me from the snot nosed private into a soldier. He was hard on me, man. Like I have a lot of four letter words to describe him. If that, like, he was hard on me, but man, after he died, it was kind of kind of a given, I think, in the team that I
Yeah,
was going to take over. Like
yeah,
they all just kind of expected it, and I just carried on exactly how I thought Sergeant Carson would do,
mm,
and the team respected that. And you're right, humility played a big part in it, but I think the most vulnerable I got was I went to every single one of them and I'm like, look, I have no idea what I'm doing.
yeah.
Like,
Boom.
like y'all got this. Like, y'all got my back, right? Like, we're about to go get shot at, and I don't know what to do. And they all had my back. And at that point, it's different because ego doesn't really have a place
No.
when people are shooting at your face. Like that's not the time to have ego. And I think everyone understood that. No one cared. We just cared about getting out of there alive. And man, they. I wouldn't be the leader I am today if it hadn't been for every single one of those guys because they had my back. And I don't know if it was because I went to them and almost a plea of like, I need y'all's help. I need y'all to have my back on this, or if it was Sergeant Carson or just the Army in general. I don't know. But to be honest, I've never actually thought about that until now. But 100% vulnerability, and it's funny. I got lit up on LinkedIn because I wrote an article about that, about how we need to be vulnerable as leaders.
Yeah.
And everybody, man, I got no good comments from it at all.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about if they were vulnerable or whatever, then they would get eaten alive in their corporation or their company or whatever. And it's like, dude, if that's the case, you're in the wrong place. Like, that should never
100%.
be the case. I should be able to. And a great story is a good friend of mine. She had made a very big mistake. We're talking a six-figure mistake in her company. And she went to her team and she was like, look, I screwed the pooch and this happened. And she said everyone in her team's first response was, oh my God, how did you do that? And then their second response was, how can we help you fix it? That's what vulnerability does. right? That esprit de corps, that camaraderie, like all of that stuff that everybody's like, oh, I wish we could be like the military has, like with that camaraderie, that esprit de corps. You can, but being vulnerable is part of it, right?
100%.
Because I'm sure there have been times where you've had to go to your guys and be like, look, I have too much. I can't do all of this. I need y'all's help. And they're like, okay, what do you need? Right? That's what it's about. And I like to talk about, SEALs or Green Berets or Rangers. You know, each person on a SEAL team has a very specific job, very specific. Every single person on that team knows each other's job enough to help, not to necessarily be proficient, but enough to help. And there's a reason for that. You have a SME, a subject matter expert, and then you have people to help fill in emergencies, right? That is that is what makes that team so dynamic and so powerful, is you have one person you can just rely on, but that one person is relying on the other team or every single other team member to have his back, because he knows, you know, they may not be the medical expert, but they can do a trach in a pinch if they got to,
Yeah.
right? So that SEAL medic isn't going to be just dealing with a mass casualty all by himself, right?
Mm.
Like his entire team is there to back him, and that's where we get lost. And dude, I never in my life thought I would. It blows my mind to this day when people, oh, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Like what? 100% it's your job, bro. You get a paycheck, it's your job. Like, I don't understand that mentality. Help the team. If the team thrives, you thrive. If you thrive, the team thrives. I don't understand this mentality of me, 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 me.
I kind of go back to this concept now where I work in a civilian driven organization. So, like, I'm in acquisitions now. I'm still an active duty Army officer at the field grade, but I see there's different organizational structures. So, you can be a government corps, which means basically you're siloed within that organization. You work for the government. Or you can be a matrix employee, which means you are contracted out by this organization to this army organization. And the way I kind of see that is that you have multiple different organizations you work for, but you also have that loop, that thread between the two. You never you're always able to cover down on other people's kind of blind spots. That's the best way I like to think of it, versus being siloed in, well, this is just my job and I only do
Mm-hmm.
this and I can't do anything else, versus no, there's a thread of where you're at and where I'm at, and you should be able to do everything that I can do proficiently, maybe not to the level that I can, which is okay, but we have to have that level of redundancy. We can't have single points of failures, because when a single point of failure goes down, then the system fails. And
Right.
at the primordial level, what we are is a system of systems. Every organization is a system of a system. And if you think of the soldier, like when we're actually deployed with our kit, we have, our IOTV. Well, that's a system because it protects us. We have our radio. Well, that's a system because it communicates. We have our Blue Force tracker, our net warrior device. We have our goggles. We have our weapon, which extends our operational reach. We have all these things that are systems that build upon each other. But if one goes down, well, we potentially have another one, like our 320 or for 40
Right.
mic or whatever it is. And it's getting that type of mindset within a civilian culture that I think is one of the most challenging things to do, because they've always been raised, well, don't go above and beyond, do what you're supposed to do to get paid for, and then just be done for the day. Well, that's not how good organizations become great or extraordinary. That's how mediocre organizations stay mediocre. If you want to be part of a team that's mediocre, congratulations, get off my team. I don't want you
Right.
on my team. And it's
Beat feet,
hard, man.
homie. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you said this too, so I remember when we were talking about the first time you knifed hand a civilian. We haven't even kind of got there yet in your leadership journey, but I walk me through what happened the first time you knifed hand a civilian, and I'll tell you a story after that one.
I don't remember exactly what had happened and as to why I did it, but Actually, you know what? I think I do. They wanted to go home early,
Mm,
and their work was done. And it's like, no, you don't get to go home early. Like, I don't care if your work's done. We're not done. The team isn't done. And they started giving me grief about it. And I did a complete 180. And as I came around, you know how it's done, like that about face knife hand.
yep,
Like,
100%.
oh, dude, and it was on point, man. Like it was a sniper kill. Like just about, and it was like right at the tip of their nose, not touching them, just right there. And I was like, you will not argue with me. And man, the look on their face, it was a cross between extremely ticked off, extremely scared, and just confusion, not knowing what just happened to them. And so the next day, that wasn't that big of a deal. They just walked away, and I thought that was the end of it. Didn't even occur to me until the next day when my boss called me into his office. Thank God this man was a retired soldier as well, so he knew
Mm,
exactly. But he was a long time retired, but he knew exactly what was going on. Um, and so he had it. He actually I had it up on camera, and
oh
he
wow.
was watching it. He was watching it in a loop. So I walk into his office and I see it, and I'm like, you know, I was a little bit off target, but that's pretty good, man. And he's like, you can't do this, dude. Like, what are you doing? This isn't how we talk to people. I'm like, I didn't even raise my voice. I said it sternly, but I didn't raise my voice. He's like, well, body language is a part of communication, and this is not how we communicate. He's like, that's how you communicate in the army, but that's not how we communicate here. And so that employee didn't actually speak to me, like face to face, speak to me for probably 6 months.
Wow.
Like they were just mad. And I don't know if they're mad or if I scared them. I don't even know. But they just, from that day on, they hated me, hated my
Mm.
guts. And yeah, it is what it is, man. You got a knife hand to deal with it. Like, it's not like I touched you. I didn't hit you. Like, could have been much worse.
All right, team, let's take a quick break from this podcast. And I want to personally invite you to our private Facebook community that I call Purposeful Accountable Leaders, or PALS. And PALS is a community dedicated to inspiring and developing servant leaders by sharing transformational stories and skills, exactly what Tells of Leadership is all about. My goal is to build a community of like minded leaders that can share lessons learned, ask questions, and celebrate wins when it happens. And my mission in life is clear. I will end toxic leadership by sharing transformational stories and skills, and you will find countless transformational leaders in this group. Many of them I have had the honor to serve with in the military. If you want to find a community that can help you grow both personally and professionally, we would love to have you. You can simply search Purposeful Accountable Leaders on Facebook or click the Leadership Resources tab in the show notes to join. I am looking forward to seeing you guys and continuing to grow together on our leadership journey. Back to the podcast. I so every time I kind of go into an organization, the organization I work for now is just a different type of breed within acquisitions. So they kind of get that alpha-ish mentality when it comes to like combat arms. But the last organization I worked for, PO Aviation, I kind of would always warn people, be like, hey, I have a knife hand. Sometimes I can't control it. And it comes out. And just know that I love you. And I mean nothing by it. But we were at a kickoff with one of our vendors that worked out in San Francisco, and I'll kind of keep all the names and stuff off and the program off. But we were sitting in this room, and the bottom line is that they basically made drones for us, and they were unwilling to talk about putting lethal payloads or secondary loitering munitions on it. And at the time, and I'm sitting in this room, and they've made this ethical decision as a company not to do it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, you make this ethical decision not to do this, but you are actively potentially sending drones to countries that are being used to target for indirect fires. And I look in the room and I ask them, what's more important to you, a soldier's life, a son and daughter, or your moral high ground? which you're already breaking. And it got to the point where I started knife handing basically the CEO of this multi-million dollar organization. And then everyone else within there, the CFO, the CTO, all these other people, and then my chief engineer on my team kind of had to pull me away and separate me because he started like just igniting a fire inside of me that I could not get away from. And because you and I kind of share like almost a similar story, not quite to the level of intensity you had, but when I took over my platoon in Afghanistan, I met my platoon for the first time, and this was one of the most humbling moments in my life at Sergeant Rodriguez's memorial. So at that time before I had an agenda, right? Like I wanted to go be a platoon leader that was getting after it, going in and doing firefights so I could go be a regimental platoon leader. That was my goal. That was my entire aspiration until I had a realization or like just a aha moment of, wow, man, I am being selfish. I'm coming in with an agenda. I see this organization that has not only had one but several, major incidents that they deployed with 44. When I took over, they had 28 people left
Oh,
in the platoon, and I realized that my goal is not for me. My mission is to get everyone back safely. And it's not to be a spotlight ranger or what we like to call, like a blue falcon in the military. It is to get every man and woman back safely. But I'm glad that happened to me at such an early age because it changed me in terms of humility. And now I always kind of go back to that moment when I take over a team. And the question that always pops in my mind is that who am I here for? Not how can I benefit from this position and get more influence or more title or more rank? And kind of going back to what you talked about of being, being able to go that little bit of extra. I think that that's where it comes from is people don't truly understand the definition of selfless service and humility because they have never went through those types of trials and tribulations. And that's the most unfortunate thing about leadership is that you have to go through pain in order to experience. And in that experience, you gain wisdom. And that wisdom can be shared with other people. Some people may not want to hear it, but other people they may, and then some people may just get a knife hand to the face. We don't know. But dude, kind of continuing with your leadership journey, talk me through as you started progressing through the ranks of how your leadership matured over the years.
so this is what, to me, this is the saddest story of my story because I didn't realize the Army had bad leadership
Yeah.
until I was about to retire. I
Oh wow.
never in my entire career had a bad leader. No one, I mean, I had some that were better than others, of course. I had some that were okay, but I never had anyone I could point to and be like, that dude's a bad leader. Every single leader I had, every single one I worked with, they were hot, man. They were on fire. They loved their team. They loved the unit. They loved the Army. They loved what we did. We had a mission. We had a purpose. We were driven. We were driven together. That was my entire experience in the Army. And then when I was retired, when I was going through the med board process, I started talking to soldiers, and they're like, "Yeah, this isn't like your stuff's a fairy tale. Like that's not supposed to happen in the Army." And it's like, wait, what? Like, I didn't realize I was the unicorn, and so that really opened my eyes. And so I kind of started exploring that just to see because I was curious. And yeah, sure enough, man, like there are some horrific leadership stories that come from the Army.
Yeah.
For me, though, I had some of the most amazing leaders, man. I had a leader. I had, and I don't want to throw their names out because I don't know entirely what they're all doing right now. But I had some that taught me when, where, and how it was okay to cry, right? Because they taught me how to control my emotion, how to go from being in combat 1 second and then going to the rear and dealing with the fact you just lost two dudes.
Yeah.
because that's hard. And you have to be able to control and deal with those emotions. And then you still have to be strong for your team, for everyone around you, right? For the mission. Like you can't lose strength, but you still have to deal with the emotion. I had leaders that taught me that. And then I had another leader that taught me the value of, you know, I don't want to say fraternization, but it's okay to be the guy for your team.
Yeah.
Like the army makes us so scared to be friends with our team. Like you can be a careful friend is what I call it,
I love
where
that.
where we're buddies and we hang out and we're talking, we're laughing, we're having a good time. But when it's time to work, you understand that, you respect me, you understand my decisions are final. It's not a debate, yada yada yada. When I have to discipline you, you understand that it's not personal. It's a job. We're professionals. This is how we handle things. And then once we're done, we go back and we play some poker back in the rear. That's okay. I had a leader that taught me that, but we're so scared of fraternization and being too chummy.
Yeah.
But without that openness and that transparency and just really letting them get to know you, they'll never fully trust you.
100%.
So, I had leaders that taught me the value of personal relationships. But most importantly, I had a leader, and I will throw his name out there, Sergeant Patitucci, who taught me the value of always understanding your purpose and always being able to communicate your purpose to everyone around you, to everyone you're leading, everyone who's leading you. Like, and I'm not just talking about the purpose of the mission, I'm talking about your purpose on that mission, your purpose for being on that mission, every little detail that's brought you to the point to where you stand right now, understanding that deep purpose, because ultimately that purpose is what drives us. And at the beginning, when I was talking about that 3.5 years of transitioning from the military to the civilian life, that is what happened to me. Is I lost my purpose. I had nothing to cling on to. I had nothing to drive me, to guide me. And it wasn't a fact of I didn't understand my purpose, I just didn't have one. And that almost killed me. And so, I mean, that's the biggest value. And so now, whenever I'm coaching people, when I'm teaching people, the very first thing is I ask them, what is your purpose? And
Hmm.
I've actually gone out in public and surveyed people, and I've been like, what is your purpose? And I'm very generous with these numbers, very, very generous. 1 out of 10 people will give me an actual okay purpose for their life. 3 people will give me some BS answer that's just fluff, has no substance at all, and is just whatever, it's lip service. And then the other 6 will just flat out say that they don't know. How sad is that? How do you live life and not know your purpose? And I'm not saying your purpose has to be making money and getting, rich and have, my mom's purpose was her children.
Yeah.
It wasn't glory. It wasn't fancy. It was her kids. It was the 4 of us. That was my mom's purpose. My dad's purpose was to feed us and to raise us into men that were contributors to society. That was my dad's purpose. My purpose is to teach people, to influence people, to want to grasp leadership by the horns and go out and influence other people and change their lives, right? But without that purpose, I have nothing to drive me, and that leads to chaos, depression, suicide, addiction, alcohol abuse, all that stuff. That's how we get there, is because we lose our purpose. I'm sorry, I took this the wrong way of what you originally asked me.
Dude, no, I love it. Kind of getting down, in that rabbit hole, and that's where I wanted to go next. Anyways, like talk me through your transition out of the military. But I think you and I fully agree. I did not understand what my purpose was until I transitioned into acquisitions and I had the time to slow down and really reflect on my life, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And really focus on what made me happy, truly happy in life, and why did it make me happy. And then to me, I remember when we talked on the phone, is that I have an equation for fulfillment. I think balance it's a word that's often used, but I
It's a
think
lie.
it's a lie, 100%. Like, I think you can find fulfillment in life, but you cannot chase balance, because all you're doing is you're chasing the dopamine fueled spike. You may have balance at a fleeting moment in time, but then again, life becomes unbalanced. But you have to be okay with that. It's like there's a
Mm-hmm.
quote out there by someone that says, "You can't control the ocean, but you can learn to surf a wave." That's kind of the goal in life, is you just need to learn how to ride that wave and be okay with the journey and the destination. And when I realized, okay, my passion, this is what I love doing. I love being a leader. I love being in a servant role. I love serving others. My purpose, why am I put on this earth? And I think there's two distinct purposes, at least for me. I have a distinct family purpose, very similar to like your father. Like, my legacy is going to be my children, and I want to have amazing adults. I want my daughter to be the best version of herself, and she's already better than me, way better than me. I'm telling you right now. I'm going to have her on the podcast actually in November, because that young woman is so inspiring to me. She
How old
really
is
is.
she?
She's 10. Dude, she is. So just a couple stories for her, right? Like, so she got fourth, never wrestled before in her life. She got fourth in the States in Alabama for all girls wrestling championship.
Nice.
She was the leading soccer the leading scorer in her club for soccer last year. We moved to DC. She's already making a name for herself in soccer. She constantly wins chess matches, and she wins like math stuff and all those crazy things. Her hobbies is doing art projects and reading and all of these things. And I remember, man, when I was 9 or 10 years old, what was I doing? I was probably eating crayons or doing something. I mean, I grew up in rural West Virginia, so use your imagination on what I was doing at that age. But and how I see her, and it's so inspiring. Playing soccer, especially at a goalie position, she is commanding and controlling her team, but she doesn't do it from this position of where, like, I am the leader, hear me roar. She does it from this very humble mentality of giving out clear, concise orders. And I love this quote by Brene Brown, is that being clear is being kind, being unclear is being unkind. But she is going to be amazing or whatever she chooses to do. And I would love to just kind of bring her on here
That's
and pick her
awesome, man.
brain.
Yeah.
But so now I went down a sidetrack. But anyway, so passion, what you're passionate about, finding your purpose and really crafting that down and homing it in to what you want it to be. And then what is your perspective in life? You have to have a vision. How are you going to get there? You can say all the words, but you have to have deeds and words aligned to actually gain momentum and traction. Force plus acceleration times momentum, all of those things we have to be able to do in life. But so I fully agree with you. I think purpose is something that is absolutely critical, especially for military service members who transition. It doesn't matter what your rank is. Too, I've seen full bar colonels get out of the military who you would think on paper would have the most fulfilling retirement in the world, because they're making like $15,000 a month. Money is no longer an option or an obstacle for you, but they're still stressed
Mm-hmm.
and they're still depressed, and it's because they have no purpose. They
Right.
had this deep sense of purpose and responsibility, authority in the military, but when they transitioned out, it's just all gone. But kind of walk me through your transition, man. Like, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to face? How you overcome that? How did you overcome those challenges?
Man, how dark am I allowed to go?
Uh, PG-13.
Oh boy, that'll be hard. Okay.
You go
So
wherever you want, brother.
no, I don't. I don't. We're plus we're live. People are got their kids around. I don't want to upset their kids, but so first of all, my med board was unexpected.
Yeah.
It was semi unexpected. I kind of expected it, but I didn't expect it right then. I thought I was going to be. I had a legitimate thought that I was going to be able to squeak out 20
Hmm.
at least, and In hindsight, when I look back now, the Army made the 100% right call on getting me out. I
Yeah.
was a detriment to the team, and that's great. Good on them. They did it right. But I felt jaded nonetheless. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like I gotten screwed. So I was mad at the Army. I was mad at my then wife. I was mad at my kids. I was mad at the world. I got into the civilian world where no one spoke my language. And like, this is why I get so jazzed talking to people like you, because I can start talking in all the acronyms and all
Yeah.
the BS that is in our language. And you're going to understand me. I tell people, and they don't really believe me, that I can speak an entire sentence. I'd probably do an entire paragraph in just acronyms.
Yep.
And to the right person, it's going to make sense.
100%.
And like, no one spoke my language. Like with the knife hand incident, I wasn't trying to be aggressive or hurtful. It was just I was conveying my seriousness on the matter. If you aren't going to question me, but it didn't, I didn't mean disrespect, but they didn't speak my language. They didn't understand my communication, any of it. I would say the hardest thing I had to deal with was just the lack of motivation
Yeah.
I saw in everyday people. The people that just they had no fire. Like they were almost like robots. And I still see it every day. People that are just kind of going through the motions of their life, and it breaks my heart because I've seen people truly live their life.
Yeah.
And unfortunately those lives got cut short, but I've seen what it truly means to live your life. And then now I see what it's like to just go through the motions, and it's like, man, you're missing on. It's like looking at a Picasso that's in black and white, and then you get to look at a Picasso that's in full color,
Mm.
right? That to me, that's the difference. Like you're just going through the motions, you just see the Picasso in black and white, but when you really start trying to live your life, that's when you see it in full color, and it blows your mind. You learn to not take things for granted, like a beautiful sunrise.
Yeah.
You learn not to take things for granted, like your puppy just being an absolute nut. My wife and I just got a German Shepherd. She's 5 months old, and she is so much fun. But that was so hard for me, just seeing people, and I would try to talk to them, and I would tell them, right, because I know, like, my life almost got cut short several times. One time closer than than the others. Literally, I died a few times, and they had to bring me back. And I know, like, my I'm not going to fall into that trap again of just going through the motions. I'm going to live my life every single day. But seeing all of this right when I started to transition, it was so overwhelming and so shocking to my system because I had never experienced this before. It just sunk me down into this deep depression. And I didn't know this at the time, but apparently I'm an emotional leader, which I guess to an extent we all are. But anyway, so when I left the Army, I weighed 220 pounds. I could run my 2 mile in just under 14 minutes. And was it 10 months later, after I left, I weighed 300 pounds. So I gained 80 pounds in 10 months.
Mm.
And I couldn't run anymore. I was, you know, every joint in my body hurt, every bone in my body hurt. I got migraines all the time. I started falling down this deep spiral. The more weight I gained, the more depressed I got. The more depressed I got, the more weight I gained. The further out of shape I got, the further withdrawn from my wife and kids I got. And I just continued down this deep, deep, deep spiral until finally it was almost that ultimate ticket,
Yeah.
out. Fortunately for me, I met, ended up going through a real nasty divorce, and then I met my now wife, who snapped me out of it, and she really made me realize what my problem was. I had lost my purpose. And so when I met her, she gave me a new purpose, and that purpose was her, which I understand most psychologists will say that's not healthy, which is true. I won't argue, but it was enough to snap me out of my funk.
Yeah.
And then now I have a fully defined purpose, and now I'm reliving my life again. And I can go deeper if you want, but it gets pretty dark and scary in there. But I think that's as much PG-13 as I can go.
When did you first realize that a coach was going to kind of help you. And did you seek out finding a coach, or was that kind of like just stumbled into?
So, to help me through that process, I didn't ever have a coach. I had a couple of mentors, which to me, a coach is someone I pay. A mentor is someone that's close to me that does it for free.
Mm, that's a good question. I was going to ask you what's the difference between a coach and a mentor. And
So, a mentor is personally invested in your success because they love you and they want to see you succeed. A coach is personally invested in your success, but it's because you pay them to do so, which both
yeah,
are okay. Both are one. I paid when I started my business, I paid $30,000 for a year of coaching from just one person. So, I mean, but anyway, so when it came to this, my transition, I got lucky. And my boss that I was telling you about watching me knife hand people on a loop, he identified it in me early on, and he really, man, he was such a godsend because he could just kind of nudge me, and I
yeah,
respected the hell out of the guy, and he would just kind of nudge me and kind of keep me kind of off the ledge, I guess you could say.
yeah,
And then, like I said, my wife is the one that fully just bum rushed me and beat me half to death and got me to snap out of it. Figuratively, she's only 5 foot tall, 100 pounds. There's no way she could beat me up. But but yeah, she's the one that really just kind of snapped me out of it. When it came to my business, though, I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel.
yeah.
So, you're an expert in acquisitions. If I'm a platoon sergeant and I need to acquire something, you're going to be the
I'm
guy
your
to teach me.
Huckleberry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're going to be the guy that I go to help coach me through that process because why reinvent the wheel when someone already knows how the wheel rolls? But at the end of the day, now the way I look at it, man, did you know Tom Brady had a mechanics coach?
mm-mm. No.
Yeah, Tom Brady had a mechanics coach. So he had a coach literally that would coach him on the position of every angle of his arm through the throwing process.
Oh wow.
Like he had a footwork coach that really he just coached him on the placement of his feet when he was moving and throwing the ball.
Hmm.
Right? He had a throwing coach. He had like all these coaches. When you look at an actor, you'll have an actor will have a coach for a southern accent, for a northern accent. Like they'll have, and it might be the same coach, but they're getting coached on different aspects of their what's going on at that time in their career.
Yeah.
My point is, like politicians. How many coaches does Barack Obama, speaking coach, writing coach, like politicians, actors, musicians, professional athletes, they all have tons of coaches. Why wouldn't you have a coach for the biggest challenge you're ever going to face, which is your life?
Yep.
Nothing is more complex than our life. So, do I think life coaching is a thing? Heck yeah, man. Everybody should have a life coach. Everybody should have a leadership coach. Everyone should have a business coach. Everyone should have like all these things, a fitness coach, a diet coach. Like, and one coach can be multiple things. But again, like, man, if Tom Brady needs a coach just for the mechanics of his arm, you definitely need a coach for the mechanics of your life.
Yeah. Dude, and undisputed too that I really do not like Tom Brady
Oh,
because
I
I
can't
am not
stand
a
them.
I am not a Patriots fan. But undisputed that he is probably the greatest quarterback ever. But
And he
why?
wasn't that good.
Yeah, he's from Michigan.
He got drafted in the fifth round.
uh,
He
and
sat
I
the
think
bench. Like he wasn't that great.
the beauty about him and his story is the power of consistency
Yeah.
and hard work and then just discipline.
And
Like,
being able to be coached.
yeah. So curiosity, being committed, and being coachable, and always being that way. I think when I read something that he spent like millions of dollars a year to try to stay young, not from a not like a vain point of view of like, going through facials and stuff like that, but his body, his joints, of being able to stay healthy. And if you look at it, I mean, it paid off. The dude, transitioned from a team to go play for Tampa, which arguably before he even got there was not a
Horrible.
Super Bowl
No.
contender. And then they get there and they win the Super Bowl. And I thought for sure he sold his soul to the devil in that moment. It's like there's no way. Tom Brady, man, and kudos to him. Like as a person, he is probably a phenomenal individual. But I think an aspect too of looking at it from Tom Brady, because I thought about this, is he doesn't even have it all together in life, right? Like football, crushed it. Life, he lost his wife and his kids. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a tough challenge. And I don't know the whole story behind it, but I think that that's just a beautiful example of it. Is you can reach the pinnacle of success in an area of your life and just be rock bottom in other areas of your life. And I think we've all had that. Like being in the military, I'm sure you understand this vividly, is that you can just be crushing it, be on cloud nine, and come home and everything just be falling apart. And that's just the nature of life. So I fully agree. A life coach is needed because sometimes we can't weather the storm that life throws at us. And we need to have that accountability tree. That's what I like to call like your ranger buddy, but accountability tree. Someone
Yeah.
who's deeply rooted, that is unwavering, doesn't want to hear your excuses. You can't just push them out of the way, but is also able to provide shade. So when times do get tough, they can kind of mentor you or coach you along the way, give you a thread to how to get to success. But talk me through, man. You what's why did you want to start Renewed Leadership, your coaching company that you're currently on right now?
Yeah. So renowned leadership. um,
I wrote it down wrong. I'm sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. You wouldn't believe how often that happens. I wanted to start it because I hate the fact that they're just and it's funny when I go talk to a lot of these quote unquote bad leaders.
Yeah.
A lot of the times they don't even realize they're bad leaders.
Yep.
They
Because
don't
no
even
one
have a
tells.
clue. Yeah, they don't have a clue that they're doing the wrong thing. All that happened was they went through a couple of months of management training. They got taught how to run the software, check the boxes, stand at the door, tell everyone what a great job they did today, thank them for working, and then hand out some gift cards at every month or every quarter or whatever. And to them, that's what leadership is. They don't
Management.
understand that it goes so much deeper and in order to be a good leader. And like you've said several times, like you talk about being a servant leader, which in my opinion is the best kinds of leader, being a servant leader.
Yeah.
But there are many different types of leaders. They all have their purpose, they all have their value, and I won't throw shade at any of them. But you have to understand your type of person. Your personality allows you to be a servant leader.
Yep.
My personality allows me to be a servant leader. Some other people's their personality doesn't allow that for them. They can still be amazing leaders though. They just
Yep.
have to be taught the way to be an amazing leader. And so, I'm a great example. My boss, that kind of mentored me after I transitioned out of the army. He wasn't a servant leader. Well, I don't know if you're listening to this, Eric. I'm sorry if you consider yourself a servant leader. I never did. But it's not to throw shade at him. That just wasn't his style. He was very cut and dry, and he was very by the book, and he was very strict, and he was very unpersonable. Right now, eventually, I learned the soft side of him, but to most people outside looking in, they just thought he was a jerk. But every single person that worked for him knew that he loved them dearly because he showed it in different ways by taking care of them, right? So it wasn't necessarily servant leadership, but he was a great leader in that regard. So that's why I started it, is because I want to teach people, if you want to be a leader, there are a plethora of ways to do it
Mm.
right. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your people. And you know, it's very simple. First, you have to know your purpose. We already talked about that. Then you have to know your why. See, people get confused. They think purpose and why are the same thing, and they're not. They're two exactly or two opposite things. Your purpose is very personal, close
Yeah.
to you. Your why is very world broad view. Your why is your purpose being displayed to the world, basically. So you have to be able to define your why. And then we go all the way to the other end of the compass to identify our integrity, because the way you operate, the way you're comfortable operating, may be completely different than the way I'm comfortable operating. So, you know, a good example is one of my business partners. I had a potential client lie to me, and I knew he was lying to me. And it's just
Mm,
like, nope, I'm not working with you. And she's like, well, it's money. Like, who cares if he lied to you? I'm like, I care if he lied to me.
yeah.
I'm not, that's my integrity. No, absolutely not. If you want to work with him, that's fine. I'll send him to you. I don't
Yeah.
care, but I am not going to work with him. You do not lie to me. And so she's okay with that. That's great. I'm okay with her being okay with that. That's not my integrity. That's not where I operate. And then once we have those three things, then in the center of it is kind of what you talked about earlier. That's where I put your goals. So it could be your personal goals, your company goals, your professional goals, all these things that gets set in the center of your compass that kind
Yeah.
of balances the needle. And so you got your purpose all the way down south, you got your integrity all the way up north. And as long as you stay in line, and you're going to attack your goals every single day. And that's kind of how I teach it. Obviously, a lot more in depth. But I just want everyone to understand, leaders, one, aren't born. You and I weren't born the way we are. We were taught over years and years of forging and training to be the way that we are.
Yeah.
Any good leader is taught. Martin Luther King was not born the leader he was. He was taught to be that way by his parents, by his grandparents, by his aunts and uncles, by society around him. He was taught to be that way. Now, he was very charismatic. That is something you can possibly be born with. He was very well spoken, very communicative. That is something you can be born with. But the actual leadership part, he was taught that.
Yeah.
You know, JFK, George Washington, all of them, they're taught to be that way. And I want people to know that. And I just think about how much of a better place the world would be if we had a whole bunch of leaders instead of a whole bunch of managers. Not throwing shade at managers. Managers are needed, very needed, but we also need leaders as well.
I always think of the cartoon of between leaders and managers is that a manager is sitting at their desk, kind of pointing at something that needs to get done, and that thing is a rock, right? That just has to get rolled up a hill, and they're sitting there and they're barking orders. A manager manages, they oversee. A leader demonstrates, and
Correct.
then they get their hands dirty with the team. They model the way and they continue to inspire. I think that's the difference probably between motivation and inspiration. I'd be interested to hear your definition between those two. But there was something that you said, and I really want to hit on that real quick. Is that there is no right leadership style, and I've seen this with senior leaders that they do not know the type of leader that they are because they don't understand their core values, they don't understand their beliefs, they don't understand the principles that make them them, so they emulate other people around them, and that is the worst thing that you can
Worst.
do because when you emulate, you are coming off as an unauthentic, disingenuous person, and that is, as a leader, the one thing that you cannot do because you can never gain trust. And I had Oak McCulloch. I think he was the first person I had on my podcast. I love that dude. He talked about a quote. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. Is that trust is the currency that leaders wield. And if you can't gain trust, you can't gain influence. And if you can't gain influence, you can't inspire other people to go do things that need to be done to kind of just move forward. But I'll pause there because I know I said a lot.
Well, no, and I was actually wanting to jump back to that, but before you even brought it up, you were talking about trust earlier, and it's like, the number one way I find to build trust within my team is to just show up at their workstation and
Yeah.
let them lead me, right? I don't show up as their boss. I show up as their hired hand. Like, how can I help you? Okay, you need me to put this together. Okay, how, I'm sure I'll know how to do it or whatever. I start putting it together, but I'm not leading this workstation. This is their workstation to lead, not mine, right? So, oh, Morris, I need you to put that down and go sweep the floor over there because we made a mess. Okay, I go pick up a broom and I run a broom. Like, I ain't below running a broom, dude. Like, I ain't below any of this. Like, I go get my hands dirty. And the second they see me do that, like, that's instant respect. That's instant trust. Like, the more they see you do that, the more it grows. It's just like a snowball, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I hear people all the time be like, dude, like, I am so buried in paperwork. I would love to do that. I don't have time. Well, no one said being a leader is easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to show up to work 4 or 5 hours early to get that paperwork done so you can be on the floor working with your people, setting the example, being the inspiration, being the motivation. Like, that is what being a leader is all about. Sometimes it sucks.
I kind of go back to a quote. I don't know if Aristotle actually said this or not, but I'm going to attribute to Aristotle. But I live my life by this. If you ever get an email from me in work, I've had it in my title block since I've been a lieutenant, is that we are what we repetitively do. Excellence then is an act; it's a habit, and that is true. And as a leader, right? Like when I was in company command, there was things that I wanted to go do. I was the first person in my company as 5:30 because I had to literally unlock the door, and sometimes I would not leave till 7 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
And in the wintertime, dude, how depressing is that when you
Yeah,
show up to work
dark
and
to
it's dark?
dark.
Yeah, and it's leaving and it's dark. But that is the definition of being in a leadership role, is it's not about you. You have to get things done. And in work right now, sometimes I'm the last person to leave. I'll leave at 6 o'clock because every Friday I want to send up a roll up. Hey, in the last 96 hours, this is what our team has accomplished. The next 96 hours, this is what our team has accomplished. And I will not feel satisfied until I get that email out. So even if I'm at work till like 6:30 at night, well, I'll be damned. I'm going to stay there and I'm going to get it done because that quote always plays in my mind. You are what you repetitively do, Josh. Don't give in to the easy button. Yeah, you could leave right now. You could, but you're not going to. And I kind of just keep playing that over and over. Dude, I didn't realize it's already an hour and 11 minutes of the time. I'm trying to be respectful of your time, but this
No, we're
is
good,
this is
man. We can talk about. I don't care. Like, this is what I do, man. Podcast. Let's go. Let's go.
so one thing I'd love to kind of transition to from you start your coaching company. You have such a deep purpose that I think all of us share. Where do you want to take this? Like the next 5 to 10 years. Walk me through your vision and the impact that you want to make.
So I don't want to give away too much because some of this is classified and you don't
Ooh.
have clearance. But no, my coaching is just funds, right? It's funding my company so I can go do other work. And here soon, I think you said what, you're 16, almost 17
Yeah,
in? Yeah,
almost.
so
Yeah,
here in a
almost
couple
17.
years, you're going to be going through. When I went through, it's called TAPS C. I think it's called something else now, something TAPS, SLF TAPS or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, the TAPS program is what this mandatory program we have to do when we retire, ETS, get out of the Army basically, or military. And it sucks and it's absolutely useless and it prepares us for absolutely nothing. My long term goal is to develop a program that replaces that with coaches, that every soldier gets a coach to help them transition. Not necessarily like deep, like the way I work with my clients now, where I'm in their business. I know their life, I know their finances, I know everything about them. Not necessarily like that, just to someone kind of handhold them through the process, because the numbers don't lie and the numbers aren't going down. And I'm sick of seeing our brothers and sisters die for a stupid reason. We know the solution, and I'm going to fix it. And so, I just need money. And so that's what this is doing. It's getting me to a place to where I can fund this other venture, start throwing money at it, and go get our government on board with it so that we can start saving lives.
Yeah, I started thinking about this a long time ago. The entire Iraq and Afghanistan conflict, and I'm just throwing swags out there. Anyone listening, this is just off the top of my head, just rough math, and I'm going to do it in public, which is dangerous.
They say the most dangerous grunt is the grunt that can do math.
Oh
So
well,
we're gonna see how dangerous you are.
so yeah, Iraq and Afghanistan, roughly 1,000 or 6,000 soldiers, KIA, plus or
Mm-hmm.
minus 1,000. Now, think about that in a rough order of magnitude. 22 soldiers a day, pass away. Rough order. Now, equate that, to 10 days. That's 220. And then what about, 20 days? That's 440. And then start applying Moore's law to that. Now, times that by 4, times that by 8. At the end of the year, you're probably around a figure well over 100,000 in a year, which is, man, I don't even know if that's close or not. But think about like the entire time, the conflict. We're gonna have to put this on the calculator for the
That's
entire
what I'm doing
time
right now.
from 2001 to now. We'll say when the end of GY era kind of ended. What is that number? I'm gonna say it was about
So,
160.
oh, bro, it's 160,600.
See that gun show
You
all day
you
long.
you a dangerous grunt.
I'm a dangerous grunt. So I have a systems engineering master's degree. I keep that on the DL, dude. And I just think about that. Of I could have, you could have, and it's not a bad thing. We could have probably saved one of those lives, one life that we could have saved out of there. And that's what I do every day. Like, I don't get paid for any of this stuff. Like, getting to talk to awesome people like you, Stephen, I do it because I'm hoping someone out there will resonate with someone's story and reach out. And then maybe what we did saved a life. And that's kind of my vision for my next 10 years is I want to impact 1 million lives in the veteran and the military community for good, for a positive change, to show, hey, you can still have a life outside the military, or you can still be a good leader in the military and not be an a-hole. there's there's ways to do it. Just be that inspiration, like Matthew chapter 5 verse 14, be that light up on the hill, right? That's what I want to be in that darkness. And I'm sure you share the same thing. We want to be that light. Doesn't matter how dark it is, the light will always overcome. You just need to be that beacon. And kudos to you, dude. That is a
Thank you.
tough but awesome mission. And as you continue to progress on that, I'm serious because it's something that I want to stay connected with, of how I can help, and even people that I have on my show that can help you get to your goals faster. Because, like you talked about this before, if you're successful, I'm successful, right? Well, if you're successful, the Army's successful, and maybe we saved a life along the way, which we're chasing significance, right? We're not chasing success. That's powerful, brother.
Yeah, and I've had many friends commit suicide, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And I was almost, fell prey to it myself.
yeah,
So, I mean, I would just say, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Looking back now, if I just had someone to tell me the problem, because I was so inundated into the problem, I couldn't see it, right?
yeah.
And that's what I tell people coaching is. I compare coaching to being a sniper, right? Because you have your shooter, right? And
Mm.
your shooter's hyper focused on his target. He sees nothing else around him except his target. But then you have your spotter. And don't light me up if I understand this is not 100% an accurate description. But
Yeah.
then you have your spotter that sees the entire 360 of the battlefield and is protecting his shooter. Now, I understand there is much more to it than that, but keep in mind, I'm dealing with civilians, and I'm not going into the finite details of what, like,
Ballistic.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Coriolis effect, dope. But I mean, like, there are so many dangers that can come up on that shooter while he's focused on his target that the spotter has to protect his from. That's what a coach is, man. He's your spotter. He sees the things you can't see. And I wish, man, 3.5 years of my life wasted because I was chasing demons down a dark hole when all it took was just someone to go, stop. This is what you're doing. And it took, I understand it takes the right person, it takes love, it takes a lot of things. I understand that I'm not going to be able to fix everyone's problem. I understand that this isn't necessarily everyone's experience, but it was mine, and if it was mine, I know it's plagued other people. And I'm a strong person. I'm strong mentally, I'm strong physically, strong emotionally, and if it almost brought me to my knees, I guarantee you it's brought other people to theirs. So that's my mission, dude. I have to do something because if I don't, if I don't do it, who will?
There's a story that kind of reminded me of is that we all have our demons, and it doesn't matter how strong you think you are. Sometimes those demons always overcome us. And the story of Kurt Angle, right? So this dude won a gold medal with a broken neck. But because, which is absolutely insane in wrestling, because wrestling is like one of the most physical sports that you can have, and then winning at such a high level with a broken neck is just, to me, unfathomable. But the dude afterwards, going into like professional wrestling and that whole rabbit hole, got addicted to opioids.
Mhm.
And if someone with that level of mental fortitude and discipline that can win a gold medal with a broken neck, and the hard work and dedication even to get to that level can become addicted or become overcome by the darkness, then we all
Oh, yeah.
can be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, again, kudos to you. And one of the last questions before we kind of get to our final show segment is, and I always love asking this at the very end, based on like whatever your skill sets are. You're a soldier, and you went back to the point of saying you're a warrior, right? What advice would you give to that brand new private? It is just joining the army right now.
Shut your face hole and listen.
I love it. And I don't
That's it.
think you're going to hear that very often in the military nowadays. There's a totally different way of educating versus how it used to be.
Oh,
And
well, I'm not very PC, so I'm sorry.
well, I say this from a standpoint is that sometimes you have to be that tough leader. Like the foundation that I am is meekness, and I,
Mhm.
I don't I don't see meekness as being weak. I think of being it reserved, listening to everything. But when you speak, people listen, and you're
Right.
decisive when
Yeah.
you do act. But sometimes people just need hard truths. And especially when you're forging someone into a soldier, I don't need a soldier to question me or second guess me when we're making a decision on the battlefield that is going to cause someone to die. And it could be that individual who's freezing up, because I've seen that. I've seen what happens when people freeze up in firefights. But
I was that guy.
that's that. But you
I was
overcame
that
it
guy.
though.
Thank God I had a good sergeant.
Yeah.
It only happened once. But yeah, man, like, just look, like, I get it. The army's hard. The military is hard. Not just the army. All branches are hard.
Except the Air Force.
Eh.
I had to.
So, someone has to make our coffee for us.
Yeah.
You ever get to eat at a Air Force DFAC, like in the green zone?
Oh yeah. I went to
Oh
go into
man, it's
Iraq
so
for the
good.
last deployment. Flew into Arif John in Kuwait, and I got
Oh,
I got a chance to sit in their defact, and I felt like, man,
it's
I should
almost
not
like
be in here.
royalty. Yeah.
It's too nice. So and of course I get this mound of food like I'm at Shoney's, like all you can eat buffet type thing, and they're just looking at me, and I'm like, what? It's free food, bro. Free food.
Dude, it's crazy. Like, I'll never forget. I don't remember what year it was, but we had been out. operating out of a patrol base out in the middle of freaking nowhere for months and months and months. And we show up to the green zone. Actually, when the green zone, it was Fob Falcon, maybe, I don't remember, but they had a banging DFAC, which in Army, that's Army for Dining Facility. So they had a banging DFAC, dude, and we walked in and they had real plates and real like silverware, not flatware. Like it was legit silverware, and like we were just amazed at this legit plate. And it's like, man, it's not flimsy cardboard, like, and this fork's not gonna break when I try to. And it's like, dude, you would be amazed at the luxuries we have here in the United States and our first world problems when that's taken away from you, and you're just like, oh my god, this is amazing. But anyway, no, real quick though, because I know we're long, really long. You asked me a question I didn't get an answer. I want to answer real quick. You asked me what the difference between my opinion on motivation and inspiration, and this is where I think 99.9% of us get it wrong. And I'm guilty of this myself. We think we need to motivate our people. And I know you, being a soldier, you hear it all the time. False motivation is better than no motivation.
Yeah.
We focus solely on motivation, and we think motivation and inspiration are the same thing, but they're not. They're two completely separate things. You see, motivation, the second you get that alarm going off at 4 o'clock in the morning and no one is yet telling you that you have to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go do PT, you're going to hit the snooze button because you're only operating off of motivation, right? Motivation quits when it gets hard. Inspiration is going to keep going. It's that fire inside of you that pushes you to not ring the bell, that pushes you to keep pushing, even though you're hurt, you're shot up, you're cut up, you're blown up, whatever the case may be in the civilian world. That is inspiration. That's what keeps you going. We've all seen the movie Lone Survivor and know the story of them. The reason they were able to fight, even though they were just completely outnumbered and destroyed, is because they were inspired by each other. And that's what we have to be as leaders. We have to be that inspiration, like you were saying earlier, that light. We have to be that fire that just spreads to our entire organization, inspires the crap out of them to go do the thing, whatever it is. Maybe it's a mission in combat, maybe it is developing a new drug, I don't know, but we have to be that inspiration. Motivation's on the individual. It's your responsibility to get motivated, not my responsibility to motivate you.
I love
But
it.
it's my job to inspire you, and you use that inspiration to get motivated. Anyway,
One of the quotes I always go back to, because I see leadership as inspiration. As leaders, we inspire. It doesn't matter if it's ourselves, if it's others, it doesn't matter, because to inspire, in my word, is a verb. It's to be a catalyst for action. And I always go back to the quote by John Quincy Adams. Always go back to it. And if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. That is the best definition I have ever found, in such a short, concise role of what leadership is. It's time for our final show segment that I like to call the Killer Bees. These are the same 4 questions that I ask every guest on the Tales of Leadership podcast. Be brief, be brilliant, be present, and be gone. Question 1. What do you believe separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader?
whew, a good leader from an extraordinary leader. Love.
Oh, I don't think I've heard that one, and I love it. All right, so question 2. What is one resource that you could recommend to our listeners to help them grow on their leadership?
Read the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It's about sales. I understand that, but having the ability to tell a story and communicate a vision is paramount as a leader, and this book is going to help you do that.
That book is phenomenal. I second that. So number 3, if you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Just keep doing what you're doing. I wouldn't change a thing.
And then the last one, where can our listeners find you? And then how can they add value to your mission?
Uh, wasn't expecting that last part. That's why I laughed. Go to renownedleadership.com, RENOWNED leadership.com. There's a connect button there. There's a book a call with me. It's completely free to book a call with me. So just click that and you get to talk to me. If you're interested in being on the podcast, there's a way you can shoot me an email on there to come be on my podcast and all that. So yeah, and to bring value to my mission, be patient with veterans, man. Like, man, I don't. That's such a hard question to answer, but just be patient. Like, most of us don't think you are entitled to anything. We think we're entitled to nothing, but it just comes off wrong because you don't understand us. We aren't speaking our communications are two different frequencies. Just be patient, show them some love, and I promise you, you'll have a great friend for the rest of your life.
Dude, Steven, this has been a phenomenal episode, brother. I always say that this is my favorite episode. Well, now this is my new favorite episode.
I
And it's a
appreciate it,
good,
my man. I had a lot of fun, brother.
yeah. So don't let this be the last time we talk, but have a great night. And I look forward to being inspired by where you take your next steps.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good night, bud.
All right, team. That was a phenomenal episode with Steven, and I had several key takeaways. The big one before we even start in our three was just the level of vulnerability that Steven shared. Steven is a phenomenal leader. And to kind of go through that, I want you to think about that, right? You've done something so deeply, so passionately for 16, going on 17 years, and then you have to stop cold turkey and you get removed from that organization for no fault of your own because of a service related issue, and then having to start life anew. Put yourselves in that position mentally and understand how tough that is. And again, this is the beauty about podcasting. I get to talk to phenomenal leaders that you may not have ever heard, but now you have. You heard his story and you understand that there are heroes out there that go through traumatic events, but they don't let the darkness overtake them, right? In Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, we are a light on that hill. Leaders are lights on the hill, they inspire. So the first key takeaway that I got is mediocre is only doing your job. And I see this in the civilian side more than I have in the military, of where people just feel this sense of entitlement to where I only need to do what is clearly defined within my scope. And we see this too within like the quiet quitting culture that is in an organization. I will tell you, if you ever work for me and you have that mentality of where you are just going to do enough to get by, you will not be working for me. I want servant leaders around me that is willing to cover the blind spots and the dead space for others. And the key word there is redundancy, able to do my job just as well, if not better than me, willing to do things for others when they need that help. I don't want the individual who is a clock chaser that watches the clock hit a time and leaves. I want the individual who trains to a standard, not to time. Mediocre organizations remain mediocre. Great organizations become extraordinary when they create the culture and they have that type of leadership that chooses to serve others versus themselves. So remember that. If you're going to be mediocre, you're always going to be mediocre. And if you're working in an organization that has that mediocre level of performance, really reflect on it and think about where you want to go in life. The next key takeaway that I have is understanding your purpose. Purpose is critical in life because it provides a anchor point, a firm foundation of where we want to go in life, and being able to clearly communicate that. And the way Stephen kind of talks about that is a purpose is clearly communicated. The purpose of this mission is to do X, Y, Z. The purpose of this piece of equipment is to do X, Y, Z. Well, what is the purpose of your life? Why are you on this planet? And when you can begin to connect that, you can begin to gain momentum in life. because now you're working towards something that inspires you. Remember, my definition of leadership is to inspire. That is what leadership is. It is to be the light, not just for yourself, not just for your team, but everyone around you. And then the final key takeaway that I have, and I love this one, is there is no right leadership style. And I have seen toxic leaders be toxic, not because they are truly poor leaders, but because they've had poor leaders that they modeled and emulated their leadership styles. They don't know what right looks like. So they emulate others. You are unique. You are created by God, and you have your own unique strengths and characteristics that were gifted to you from God. And I'm not shy about my faith. I boldly declare it. And you need to understand what those are. Find your leadership style, but also understand that a leadership style, in essence, is like the water. It is malleable. It's like trying to control an ocean. You can't, but you can learn to ride the wave. And that's exactly what I talked about in this podcast episode. Stop getting fixated on a specific type of leadership style and just be your true, authentic self and adapt to the situation. And if you can do those things, you are going to knock it out of the park because you're serving your organization at an authentic and vulnerable state. And when you become vulnerable, not vulnerable about just whining and crying about everything in life, vulnerable about being authentic, accepting that you don't know all the answers, being humble, what we talked about in this podcast episode, then you're going to achieve great things. Your organization is going to achieve great things, and you're going to stop chasing success and you're going to start chasing significance. But I want to leave you with this note, and I always leave it with it, but I have tons of other leadership resources. I'm actually in the process of updating my website and making it a little bit more professional, but it would mean the world to me if you could do some things. First is share this podcast, share it with everyone. Everyone in life is a leader. You have to learn to lead yourself. Share this with service members who need to hear this episode. Share it with civilian leaders. Share it with managers. It doesn't matter. Share this podcast episode and help me extend my message and make my vision come true of impacting 1 million lives in the next 9 years. Number 2, leave me a 5-star review. It doesn't matter what episode you listen to or what platform you listen on. The fastest way that I can help extend my influence out there in this world is by getting more shares and more reviews, because it's like throwing a pebble in a water. One ripple here, one ripple there. It's not noticeable. But when I have you guys helping me, well, then we start throwing 1,000 pebbles and it becomes noticeable. You cannot ignore it anymore. So help me build that. And then number 3 is support the show. If you like what you hear, you can go to Tales of Leadership. You can go to McMillionLeadershipCoaching.com. You can go to the Buzzsprout hosting site, and you can support in a monetary means. And everything that I get, 100% goes back towards creating powerful content and becoming combat multiplier for myself so I can continue to create great content for you guys. And also go follow me on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join our private Facebook community, Purposeful Accountable Leaders. I would absolutely love to have you. But as always, I'm your host, Josh McMillian, saying every day is a gift. Don't waste yours. I'll see you next time.